Hello, this is Heather of Shutterbug 101. Today we'll be going over the Canon SL3 with their kit lens 18-55. Let's get started. The Canon SL3 is a 24 megapixel crop sensor DSLR with 3,975 focus points and a continuous drive of 5 frames per second. This camera has a fully articulating touch LCD screen, shoots in 4K video, has a microphone port, and built-in Wi-Fi for transferring your photos to a smart device. The SL3 is perfect for beginners who need a simple overlay with optional advanced features, but also for those who are interested in great video. Today we will be going over the doors, buttons, and menus of the camera body to help you find your way around it. Okay, so going over the Canon SL3 today, the Rebel. A lot of you have probably heard of the Rebel series. You know, they have the T7i and the T7 out right now, but they also have their SL series, so the SL3, which is going to be a little bit different. Body is going to be a little bit smaller, more compact. There's not going to be so much littering the dial here. There's actually going to be more video modes. So if you or someone you know is, just getting into photography, they want the option for good video and good pictures, this would be an excellent camera for them to get. We're going to, of course, start like we always do, start with the front of the camera. This button right up here, which is the only button on the front of the body, is going to remove the lens. So if we click and hold, and then we move the lens over here, comes right off. Of course, you'll see a red dot and a white square. Your Canon lenses are either going to have a red dot or a white square on them. At that point, if you would like to put one of those lenses on, you just line up the white square with the white square here, and then you turn till it clicks. Very simple. As you can see on the kit lens here, we do have a couple of switches. Now, some lenses will have no switches, some lenses will have 2 switches, some lenses will have more switches. So it really just kind of depends on the lens that you have. But this lens that comes with this camera has 2 switches on it. This one here is going to be for your autofocus and manual focus. So if you naturally have it lined up with the AF, which stands for autofocus, that allows you to push your shutter button halfway down for it to focus for you and then push all the way down to take a picture. Otherwise, if it's not focusing where you would like, you can switch it into manual focus and use this front ring here to dial in the focus that you would like. And then the second switch here is going to be our stabilizer. Our stabilizer is going to be for those handheld moments because naturally we all have a little bit of shake in our hands because blood is constantly running through our body. So even if you think you're the most still person in the world, the stabilizer can definitely come in handy. The only time you're really going to turn your stabilizer off is if you're on a tripod, because at that point the tripod or the gimbal or whatever you have this on is doing the stabilizing and it's not being handheld. Going to the sides of the camera here. On this side, we're going to have a little door. So if we open up that door, that is going to be our USB and our HDMI ports. The HDMI, so you can plug your camera into like your smart TV or television set that features an HDMI cable. That will allow you to show like a slideshow of your pictures to a group of people. Like, so if you did a wedding or something and you wanted to show a slideshow of pictures from the ceremony at the reception, or if you just want to go through the settings on a bigger screen, something like that, maybe show videos, that is what that is for. The USB is going to be actually for data transfer. So if you wanted to transfer pictures, videos, whatever it may be that you've done with the camera to your computer, you're just going to use the USB cable, plug the camera into your computer and be able to access those files. Otherwise, you can always take the card out and put it in a card reader. And then this is also good for if you wanted to update the firmware on this camera. So if Canon creates a firmware upgrade to help with different settings on the camera, give you an update to software, more features, all you have to do is make sure your battery's fully charged, follow the directions on their site, and you'll plug the camera in with their USB to be able to get that new firmware on there. On this side of the camera, we have another door. So we open that up. This, of course, is going to be for our remote shutter release and our mic port. So the remote shutter release is really handy if you're doing any long exposures. And then your mic port is going to allow you to get better audio for your video, because naturally at the moment your mic is only here and here. That is going to be the built-in mic on the camera, and it's going to pick up every little sound. So if you're trying to get more direct sound, this mic port to mount the mic on top of the hot shoe here is going to be the best way to do that. Going to the top of the camera here. So this, of course, as I referred to just a moment ago, is a hot shoe. You can use this to mount a microphone up here, but you can also use this to use an off-camera flash. This camera does have a built-in flash, which you just flip up to use anytime you would like it. But these built-in flashes don't tend to give you very good quality images. It tends to look like you're shining a flashlight in someone's face, and just not super flattering if you're doing portraits or something like that. So getting an off-camera flash with a diffuser, you can actually soften and spread the light in different directions and give yourself more natural looking photos. We're going to go ahead and go to our mode dial here. So let me go ahead and switch this on. As you can see, we do have on, off, and there's a little video camera. When you're turning it on, it's going to be specifically for photo taking. When you want to do video, that's when you're going to switch it over to the video camera, and it'll allow you to do that. But going over the mode dial here, the green A with the plus is going to be your auto mode. In auto mode, you're giving the camera full control over whatever picture it's taking. You have no control in telling it how you want the picture done or anything like that. If you're just starting out with photography and this is your first camera, or you've never played with your manual modes before, this is a great mode to get started in. That way it helps you get adjusted to the camera, help you get a good feel for it, help you feel comfortable with it, so you can move into these other modes here. Another mode here is going to be our scene mode. As you can see with our articulating LCD screen, if we access our scene mode, that will allow us to choose a scene. So you can pick portrait, smooth skin, group photo, landscape, sports, kids, close-up, food, candlelight, night portrait, handheld night scene, and even high dynamic range backlight control. So these are all going to be automatic as well, but you're telling the camera more specifically what the camera should be prepared for. So it'll automatically choose the best settings for a portrait or for a landscape or so on and so forth. But don't let this control what you do on a day-to-day basis. Oh shoot, I'm on portrait, I should be on landscape. It doesn't, you know, at that moment, you might miss your chance at a good photo. So, you know, don't let that control everything you do. The two circles here is going to be your filter mode. It's going to be, you can choose your filter by pressing the Q button here or the Q button here for your quick menu. And then you can choose filters. So there's grainy black and white, which I think is probably the only one really worth using, but these are other ones that you can play with. Soft focus, fisheye effect, watercolor painting, toy camera effect, you know, so there's a lot of different little features on here that you can just play with, see what you like. And then we go into our manual modes. So we're going to start down here at P. So our P mode is actually going to be a program. Program is going to be your first step off of auto, because it's still automatically giving you recommendations on what it recommends, but it also gives you the freedom to pick what settings you do want to change, like your focusing or your metering or something like that, which we'll go over here in a moment. And then it'll adjust everything else so you still get a proper exposure. So the P mode isn't one to be afraid of just because it's a manual mode. It's one to help you get more creative freedom to do whatever you want. TV is going to be our time value. That's going to be our shutter control. This is going to allow you to either freeze motion or show motion by adjusting the speed at which it's taking the photo. And then the camera determines how much light needs to be let in order to give you access to that speed. You have your AV mode, which is aperture variable. This is going to control how much light is let into the camera. This also controls that nice blurry background, sharp foreground you get with some lenses. It allows you to get that starburst effect coming with the sun coming through the trees. It also helps you in low light situations where you can control how big that opening is, so you can let as much light in as possible, because the more light, the faster the picture will take. And then of course we have M for full manual, which if you're just starting out with this camera, you may not find yourself in manual anytime soon, or in a few years. So, and don't let that intimidate you either. If anyone comes up to you and says, well, if you're not shooting on manual, you're not a real photographer, that is completely false. If you're shooting in your P mode, if you're shooting in auto mode, as long as you're getting to know your camera, everybody works in a different pace. So whatever you're doing and you like how the picture's coming out, good for you. If you want to move on farther, you just have to know what your goals are and know how to use the tools to achieve your goals. But it's not too difficult. It's just a step-by-step process, so keep that in mind. Up here on top, we do have our display button, which is going to change the display on the back screen here. So it's really just going to turn it on or off. Not much more than that. ISO is going to immediately allow us to control our sensitivity to light. So if, say, your lens is limited, like this one is, to how much light you can let in a very dark, dim situation, you can adjust your ISO to a higher number to be more sensitive to light, which will then allow you to take the picture at a faster speed. Now, I will go over more on ISO in another video, so take that one step at a time. For now, while you're getting to know your camera, I would have your ISO set to auto, and then set a limit to it in your menu, which we'll go over here in just a moment. So stay tuned for that. Up here is going to be one of our adjustment knobs. So in P mode, if you go and take a picture, you have your shutter speed and aperture pop up. If you change one of those, the camera is going to change the other. So the smaller number on aperture is going to be a smaller opening to let light in, versus a lower number is going to be a bigger opening. And then of course with shutter speed, it's all going to be in fractions. So you have like 1/60th of a second. If we turn it to TV, this camera has the ability to go up to 1/4000th of a second. So this camera can go very fast, but you do need the available light to be able to take it that quickly. And this, of course, is going to be your shutter button, the whole mechanism that takes the picture. You push halfway down to focus, you push all the way down to take a picture. Very simple. Now we're going to go ahead and move to the back of the camera here. So, as you can see, we do have our menu button, which we'll go over last. Our info button, which is going to really do the same as our display button. It's not going to really do much. We have our viewfinder. Our viewfinder here lets us kind of window off and be able to compose our shots through the viewfinder and then take the picture. Now what you're seeing is a reflection of the mirror inside the camera that's shining through the lens. So what you see is not what you're going to get, so do keep that in mind. It just allows you to kind of help you frame your image. We do have a diopter here. This does turn and adjust. So it's kind of like the eye doctor. Not everybody's eyes are the same. So, it's like when they put those slides in front of you, slide 1, slide 2, which one's clear? Well, you can just turn this until the inside here is nice and clear for you. This button here with the little camera on it in our on spot is just going to give us live view. So if we hit that, it's going to give me a live view on my screen, which is going to be a little bit closer to what you're going to see in your image. It's giving you a live feed of what's going to the sensor. Now, this isn't a feature I would use if you're trying to take pictures of wildlife or sports or something that's moving quickly, because when you do take a picture, it has to lower the mirror, then it has to raise the mirror again to take the picture. So it has to kind of do an extra step. But this, if you're doing macro photography, if you're doing landscaping, this will allow you to use a touchscreen option to be able to pinpoint where you would like it to focus, which is kind of cool. Versus having to kind of move it around with your directional pad while looking through the viewfinder. So it is a really nice feature for things that are still. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, if you are on your video mode, it's automatically going to put you into a live view mode. And then to start recording, you're going to hit this button that's next to the red dot to start recording, hit it again to stop recording. Very, very simple. These buttons here are going to be able to zoom in on pictures that you've already taken by pressing the playback button down here to see if someone's blinking in a group of people, to make sure your photos are indeed in focus, that sort of thing. And then we have our trash can down here, which allows us to delete pictures that we've taken. We have our exposure compensation here. You will notice that the same AV that is on our dial is going to be on this button. What that means is it recommends that if you're not in P mode, it recommends that you're in AV mode before you adjust this. So what it does, if I go ahead and put it in live mode to give you guys a better view, if I hit this button and then I adjust on the top, I go +3, it's going to make it brighter. If I go -3, it's going to make it much darker. So it's a little shortcut for you to be able to make your scene a little bit lighter or darker without changing any major settings. Then we have our quick menu, which of course is accessible by this Q here if we turn our live view mode off. Otherwise, off of our live view mode, it's going to be the Q button down here in the corner. When we hit our quick menu, it's going to allow us to change anything we see here on the screen. So our ISO, which we kind of went over the little shortcut up here earlier, our exposure compensation, which is also this button, our flash exposure compensation, which I wouldn't worry too much about. We have our color effects, so this will allow you to make more vivid colors for landscaping, auto, black and white, something like that. We have our white balance, which is going to control our temperature, so our warmer versus cooler in situations. But if you keep it in AWB, which is auto white balance, it's really good at determining what's supposed to be white. So in most situations, AWB is good to keep it in. You have like white balance shifting or bracketing, if you would like to bracket with the temperature control. We have auto-correct image brightness and contrast. I wouldn't worry too much about that, I just keep it on auto. We have our metering mode, where it's taking the light from. So up here is our evaluative metering, where it's considering the entire image to balance out light. We have partial metering, which is going to be more of a general zone. We have spot metering, which allows us to meter like way over here versus the center, which as you can see my camera up here, which is recording, is on our center weighted average. So whatever's in the center with the backlit screen or, you know, the darkness of the camera or the lightness of the mat, it's going to change the lighting accordingly. We have our autofocus operation, which is going to be how it's autofocusing. One shot is going to be autofocus single, where it autofocuses and locks on to a single subject. Usually subjects that aren't moving, like landscapes, flowers, that sort of thing. Al servo, which is going to be for continuous autofocus, which allows it to follow focus on moving subjects in the frame, so good for sports and wildlife. And then we have all focus, which is going to be auto, essentially, where you're letting the camera determine if it's still or moving. We have where it's autofocusing, so if you want it to be a specific spot or area, or if you wanted it to be everything, you could do that. I personally like to have a single spot. I like to be very specific with my focus, so it really just depends on what you want to do. We have our drive mode, So the single square, when we click our shutter button down all the way, is going to take 1 picture. If we have it on continuous shooting and we click the button down and hold it, it's going to take continuous pictures at 5 frames per second. We have silent single shooting, which does quiet it up just a little bit. And then we have silent continuous shooting. So these are really good for like weddings or something where you want to be respectful, not, the mirror can be fairly loud, and even in silent mode, you still hear sound. So do keep that in mind. And then we have our different timer modes. And then the last one here is going to be our image quality and size. So we have RAW, we have JPEG. When you are shooting in JPEG, you always want to do large. You never want to go medium and small, so do keep that in mind. You can shoot in either or both. And then at the bottom here, we can see that it gives us our battery life. If we would like our Wi-Fi to be on or off to be able to send photos and videos to our smart device. And then we have how many pictures we have left, which on my current card I have 309 pictures left to be able to do in RAW. Now we're going to go ahead and get into our menu, hopefully. Getting into our menu. So we have our shooting menu, our playback menu, our Wi-Fi menu, our function settings, and then you have your display level settings. So when I went over our quick menu, it was actually set on standard. Now, if you would like it to be guided, so if you're just starting out in photography, you want to really dumb it down, you can see that when we go to our quick menu now, it's going to have a different variety. It's showing you what your shutter speed's going to do, to adjust brightness, to adjust your drive mode, the more specific ones to that mode. Now that is all up to you, whatever you want. Personally, I like kind of the old-fashioned look. I really like the standard. So it really just depends on what you want to go for. For the menu display, I'll keep it on guided for now, just to help us navigate. We're going to go back here. Starting with the shooting menu on page 1. A lot of these menu settings are found in our quick menu or found on the outside of the camera. So do keep that in mind when we're going through this, and I might skip quite a few of these. We went over image quality. Oops. We have image review, which is going to, when you take a picture, it's going to pop up on the back screen. You can select for how long. 2 seconds is usually how long I just like it to glance at it really quick. Release shutter without the card. I would have this off because if you're anything like me, I take my cards out, I put it in a card reader. Sometimes I forget to put a card back in. And if I leave with the camera and I go and start taking pictures and the camera allows me to take it without the card, I then go back and go, oh, let me see how those came out. And it goes, sorry, I don't have a card in there. I can't show you anything. So by having this off, if you go and try and take pictures without a card, it'll let you know, hey, I don't have a card in here. You better go get one. And then you won't be disappointed. You have a lens aberration correction. That's really going to be for like those big wide angle lenses. You have flash control, which again, I wouldn't worry too much about. Drive mode, which you can also access in your quick menu. Your exposure control, which is also this button. ISO speed settings. So this is where you're going to change that sensitivity in auto. So by letting the camera decide your ISO, you can start learning about your shutter speeds and apertures. In this camera, I would say it's really safe that, 3200 is probably going to be your safe area. So you're letting the camera decide between ISO 100 and 3200 if you do end up in a low light situation. Auto lighting optimizer, wouldn't worry about that. Highlight tone priority, wouldn't worry about that. Your metering mode, which is also in your quick menu. Your white balance, we've already gone over that. Color space, I would keep in sRGB unless you're really getting into Adobe Photoshop. But even then, I would just keep it in sRGB. Picture style, also in your quick menu. Long exposure noise reduction. I personally, if you're getting into editing, I would keep this off. If you don't plan on editing your images and you're doing long exposures, you can turn this on. It does take a little bit longer to be able to take another picture just because it has to process in the camera, so do keep that in mind. High ISO speed noise reduction, just keep that kind of in the middle. delete data, don't worry about that. Live view shoot, if you'd like that to be enabled by this button here. And then the last page is your autofocus operation, also accessible in your quick menu. Lens electronic manual focus, don't worry about that. And then the autofocus assist beam firing. And what that is it allows it to shine out a light or beam to be able to focus on something that's maybe lacking detail, where it's too dark, something like that. Right, going into our playback settings, this is really not a menu that you're really going to get into. It allows you to rotate images, erase images, do creative filters, red eye correction, essentially editing in the camera, but I personally wouldn't. But you can do anything like cropping, put on a slideshow, something like that. So you won't find yourself in this tab very often. So you have your wireless settings where you can enable your Wi-Fi after you've downloaded the Canon app on your smart device, so you can transfer pictures from the camera to your phone if you would like. When you do not plan on using the camera to transfer anytime soon, I personally would disable it because it will actually help save your battery in your camera. That way you don't have to worry about it as much. But allow you to send a smartphone right after shot. It'll actually do kind of a live transfer if you have your phone connected to it, which is nice. So do keep that in mind. We have our function settings, which is really just going to be general settings in the camera itself, like selecting a folder, having your auto rotate on, formatting your card. That's something I like to go over in every video. A lot of people don't realize what this is, and they either never learn it or they find out the hard way what it is. Formatting your card essentially completely deletes all available data on your card and helps you start fresh. Now, the reason that this is important instead of just using your trash can is that when you delete pictures using the trash can, it's fine if you're just deleting a few blurry pictures and trying to make room for more. But if you've gotten back from a vacation, you're like, wow, I took 1,000 pictures, they're backed up to my computer, now I can just delete them all and start over again. Well, the reason you want to use format instead of the trash can is because when you use the trash can, it actually keeps the data on the card, but it deletes the visual image and allows you to kind of overwrite it with new pictures. Well, after the picture gets overwritten so many times, it can cause corruption, which is almost like a virus, which eats away images that you've taken, or can completely lock up your card so you can't access your images. So just to be on the safe side, when you get back from vacation, you get back from an event, you make sure that your pictures are backed up in your computer, they're backed up on an online source, they're backed up on a hard drive, something like that. You go in here and you go to format card. That way it's completely reset, the data is gone, you're starting fresh, and there are less chances you're going to have problems later down the road. You have auto power off, so it kind of goes into an auto sleep mode. After you let it sit for so long, you can change the display brightness, the screen off on, which is going to be the shutter button, pushing it halfway down, which is also, by the way, your universal escape button. If you get stuck in the menu, you can just push your shutter button halfway down to get back into the picture taking mode. Adjusting your date and time, which clearly I need to change. You have your language. You have video system, your touch control, if you want the beep on or off to let you know that it's focused. If you need to have a professional sensor cleaning done, do not do a sensor cleaning yourself. Because when you do a sensor cleaning on this camera, it's like open heart surgery, and if it gets damaged, your whole camera's gone. So if you're seeing black spots on your images, that usually means it needs a sensor clean. So you need to take it into your local camera shop or someone that services cameras and take them to have them look at the sensor. You can program these buttons here, the HDMI settings, your custom functions, if you want to clear your settings, kind of reset it if you think that you've done something wrong. You can check the firmware on this camera, and that's pretty much it. Like I said, this camera is extremely simple. It has a very simple layout. I find that it's very easy to learn. It's a great first camera. It'll last you a good long time. small size, fairly light for what it is. And if you guys have any questions about this camera that I didn't answer, if you have any, certain circumstances that you would like me to go over for like a tips and tricks, let me know in the comments below and I'd be happy to get to them. Until next time, keep your eye out for inspiration, Shutterbugs. Bye.